All right, remember there has been a big controversy that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman reacted to what Barack Obama had said, but now there's another reaction that has come from a former top US official reacting to Obama's statements. Now, and it's very interesting, he's reacting to Barack Obama's remarks about the rights of Indian Muslims. Johny, who's a former commissioner of US Commission on International Religious Freedom, says, and I'm quoting him here, I think the former president, referring to Barack Obama, should spend his energy complimenting India more than criticizing India. India is the most diverse country in human history, not a perfect country, but its diversity is its strength. And I understand why, having spent time with Prime Minister Modi, that it must be complimented. Listen
in Egypt, it was very, very clear. When I've spent time with President Sisi on a number of occasions, as I spent time with Prime Minister Modi when he was in Washington D.C., and you could see the chemistry between the two leaders. There are many forces, largely political forces, all around the world that want to divide religions and want to divide communities and divide languages. The message from the trip the Prime Minister made from India to the United States and directly to Egypt is that there's something more powerful than politics and division, and that is values. And the values of democracy in the United States, the values of pluralism on grand display as the Prime Minister of the most populated Hindu country in the world sat down with the president of the most, in many ways, the most important Arab country in significant portions of Islamic history. The message is loud and clear, and that is that there is a bright future. You know, and I said, when people ask me about the Prime Minister's visit to the United States, you know, I said a couple of things. The one thing I said was, there's a lot that we can learn from India, you know, because we complain about our couple of political parties. There are over 2,000 political parties in India. But I also said something far more important than that, and that is, we're living in a complicated time in the world, and just out of a pandemic, all kinds of issues, from the climate to the rise of certain authoritarian challenges around the world. And the message is loud and clear that there is no problem in the world that cannot be solved when the United States and India join forces. That was my message before the Prime Minister went to Egypt. And when I think about adding Egypt into that mix with its great and historic importance to the Arab world and to the Islamic world, it's an even clearer message. And let me just say this: this was not, to the United States, a symbolic visit, as it wasn't clearly a symbolic visit in Egypt. It was a substantive visit. I had the privilege, as someone who's not a member of the Indian diaspora, of attending the final speech of the Prime Minister in the United States to the Indian community. And you could just feel the energy in the room. And the Indian Prime Minister Modi, as his plane lands in Delhi, he returns to a country with a lot to celebrate, with new business relationships with the United States, a new partnership on democracy, a collaboration across religions, across languages, literally across continents. And it was very, very clear to me why the stature that Prime Minister Modi holds in our world, as he even united Americans, Democrat and Republican, at one of the most divided times in history.
Right. You know, the last 20 years have been very important.
All right, so that's the latest coming in from John Moore. Remember, he'd been a commissioner for the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, and he's also president of the Congress of Christian Leaders. But what he's saying is very interesting. He's saying that we've seen the change that has happened with Prime Minister Modi as the Prime Minister of India, the sort of support that he gets in. And at a time like this, there should have actually been support coming in for India rather than the sort of criticism. And he said it very, very important, which is actually the reality of India, that it is one of the most diverse nations in human history. It may not be perfect, but the diversity is its strength. Now, one of the big reactions that have come in on Barack Obama's interview on India, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman reacted and sharply to the remarks made by Obama on the state of ethnic minorities in India. The remarks were made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he was on a 3-day visit to the United States of America. So the timing, of course, was very interesting. Now, hitting back, Sitharaman has said 6 Muslim-dominated nations were bombed when Barack Obama was the president. He had given an approval to the airstrikes and these bombings. Nirmala said, and I quote her here, "It was surprising that when the Prime Minister at the time was visiting the United States of America, the former US President Obama makes a statement about ethnic minorities." She's added, and I again quote her here, that from Syria to Yemen to Saudi Arabia to Iraq, did bombing not take place in those times and when Obama was the president? We're talking about 7 countries here back then. 26,000 bombs were dropped, as she said. And such leaders are now lecturing India on India's religious tolerance. Should we take them even seriously? Now, soon after, Prime Minister Modi and US President Joe Biden had addressed a joint statement in Washington, D.C., remember? That's when Barack Obama, while speaking in an interview to Cristiano Manpo, had said that if he had a conversation with Modi, he would discuss the rights of ethnic minorities in India, and that what would happen if their rights were not protected, India could start to disintegrate, he said.
यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के विषय में हम अच्छा फ्रेंडशिप चाहते हैं, मगर उधर से भी भारत के रिलीजियस टॉलरेंस के ऊपर एक यूएससीआरएफ है, उनके कमेंट्स आ जाता है। राष्ट्रपति जी ने कुछ बातें बोल रहे हैं, जहां शायद 6 देशों के खिलाफ, जहां मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन डोमिनेंट है, बॉम्बिंग हुई उन्हीं के कालों में। सीरिया से लेकर के, यमन के लेकर के, सऊदी के लेकर के, इराक के लेकर के बॉम्बिंग नहीं हुआ। मोर देन 28,000, मेरे पास इतना स्पष्ट डेटा नहीं है, 7 कंट्री के खिलाफ उसी समय झगड़ा, वॉर लाइक सिचुएशन डेवलप हुआ, और मोर देन 26,000 बॉम्ब्स वे ड्रॉप्ड। ऐसे जब कंट्रीज उनके अपनी तरफ से उनके राजनीतिक निर्णय के बारे में वो करते हैं, भारत के खिलाफ एलिगेशन डालने में कहां उसको सुनने वाले लोग भी भरोसा रखेंगे।